Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about Chapter 2, Positive Theories, presented by Richard, Sarah, Josh, Yesenia, Elsa, Evelyn, Daniel, and myself, Thomas.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Araujo, and I will be covering the introduction, Anomie string theory, and goal means gap. On April 16, 2007, Cho Seung-hyo, a Virginia Tech senior, shot 2 students to death in a dormitory. He then changed the school's engineering building and shot 32 people before killing himself. Cho's deviant behavior was blamed on his easy access to guns in the United States and his mental illness. Cho's behavior and acts have risen many theories as to why he committed those acts, but the focus on the causes of his deviant behavior characterize positivist theories of deviance. The most important theories of deviance are the anomie string theory, social learning theory, and control theory. Anomie string theory. Robert Merton developed what is known as the anomie string theory back in 1938. He attributes deviance to anomie, which is a breakdown of social norms that results from societies urging people to be ambitious and successful in life, but failing to provide them with the opportunities to succeed. Merton believed that society encourages individuals to engage in deviant behavior. Goal means gap. The constant pressure from grade school to college to become successful and to be someone in life, regardless of class, leads the lower class people to engage in deviant behavior. Lower class people are not given the legitimate means to become successful. Therefore, in order to achieve their success aspirations, they respond with deviant actions. Merton explains that there is a gap between an individual's goal and the means that are provided to them to achieve that goal. Merton also presents 5 responses toward this high societal pressure towards deviance, which are conformity, innovation, ritualism, ritualism, and rebellion. Conformity is the most popular form of response. People accept the cultural goal of success and the use of legitimate means of achieving that goal. Innovation is common among the lower class people. They reject the use of legal means and engage in illegal ones in order to achieve high success goals. Ritualism is most common among lower middle class people. These people lower their aspirations so they can more easily realize their goals. Ritualism is the withdrawal from society into the shell of one's self. These people do not care about success nor work. Rebellion, rejecting the prevailing social expectation that hard work will help reach great success. Rebels attempt to overthrow the existing system and attempt to put new goals and new means for achieving these goals.
Hello, this is Yesenia Bautista. Cohen, status frustration. Merton and Cohen have similar versions of anomie string theory. Cohen suggests U.S. society encourages all classes to achieve higher success, however, making it difficult for lower class people to achieve higher success goals. Lower class people are able to achieve success in their own way, typically by engaging in deviant acts. Cohen says school is an important institution for lower class boys to achieve status, but it actually ensures failure. Why is that? School is run and taught by middle class teachers, including middle class values and behaviors. Students are judged by middle class standards of behavior and performance. In order to achieve a status of successful and good students, they must possess middle class values, virtues, and traits. For example, verbal fluency, academic intelligence, ability to delay gratification, courtesy, opposition to fistfights, and respect for property. Middle class boys have a chance of becoming successful, but lower class boys don't. Lower class boys have not been socialized, taught, and raised the same as middle class boys. Lower class boys fail because they are thrown into a system they are not familiar to and don't belong in. In Cohen's words, they are caught up in a game in which others are typically the winners and they are the losers and the also-rans. Status frustration. Frustration of being called known as a loser, and if encountered with this, it can lead lower class boys toward deviant activities. Delinquent subculture. Lower class boys go back to the neighborhoods and set up their own competitive systems. They are able to compare with someone with similar views, it's more fair, and they create their own criteria of achievement. Lower-class boys attempt to achieve status by delinquent activities such as stealing, fighting, terrorizing good children, destroying property, defying various conventional taboos. Cohen and Merton basically believe in the same theory because they both assume lower-class boys are more likely to engage in deviant behaviors because society fails to help them.
Now Richard's going to present Cloward and Olin.
Cloward and Olin, Differential Legitimate Opportunity, page 20 to 22. When Merton formulated his theory, he expressed the idea that lower classes tend to engage in deviant behavior due to a lack of legitimate means or opportunity of achieving the success goals. Although lower classes are encouraged to attain high successful goals, unlike middle and higher classes, they do not receive an equal quantity of resources. For example, first-generation children have a higher chance than second or third-generation children of falling into deviant behavior due to a lack of opportunity or resources they attain. Given that the second and third generation tend to be well off, depending on the success of the previous generation. The reason for this is that the following generations reflect previous mistakes upon themselves in order to not commit them. As a result, they progress faster and tend to be more successful. After accepting Merton's theory, Cloward and Olin prolonged it by presenting the concept of differential illegitimate opportunity. Both confirmed Merton's attempt to display the differentiation of achieving success among different classes. However, Merton's assumption that lower classes, when confronted with deficient opportunities, would automatically and successfully participate in deviant activities was mistaken. Merton was unsuccessful in acknowledging the fact that lower classes would be confronted by both legitimate and illegitimate opportunities. Cloward and Olin emphasize that while all lower classes undergo the same lack of opportunity to succeed in legitimate activities, they do not attain equal opportunities in illegitimate and deviant behavior. For example, depending on the location and upbringing of the adolescents, some youngsters do not have the desire to join a local gang, sell drugs, or commit certain crimes. Often, some have stronger aspirations and the willingness to succeed in legitimate activities regardless of the difficulties they face. This leads to the three types of illegitimate opportunities: criminal subculture, conflict subculture, and retreatist subculture. In criminal subculture, lower class youngsters are offered illegitimate opportunities to achieve success goals by stealing, robbing, or fencing. Merton assumes this type of deviance when the youth are denied conventional opportunities in larger societies. However, Cloward and Olin express the fact that many of these lower class youths are not part of this subculture and therefore reject these criminal opportunities. In the conflict subculture, adolescents are given the chance to attain status or rep among their peers. An example of this subculture would be street gangs. In these organizations, members are challenged with the task of committing crimes that would benefit the gang in return for street rep. The higher the crime, the higher level of rep one would attain. However, only those that possess great fighting skills or the will to risk injury or death in gang warfare qualify for the opportunity of achieving status within this conflict subculture. In the retreatist subculture, the only requirement for membership would be to attain the willingness to enjoy the use of drugs. Those that have failed to accomplish success in criminal subculture or status in both the delinquent underworld and conventional upper world are known as retreatist or double failures. These additions to Merton's theory led to the three versions of enemy strain theory. Merton: goal means gap to deviance. Cohen: goal means gap to status frustration and deviance. Cloward and Olin: goal means gap to differential illegitimate opportunity to different deviant activity. Nonetheless, both Cloward and Olin concur with Merton that lower class people have a greater chance of deviance due to the fact that they experience discrepancy between aspirations and the chance of realizing those aspirations.
My name is Daniel Avnilov, and I will be talking about recent development and Robert Merton's enemy strain theory, which can be found on page 22 and 23. Robert Merton, recent development. Recent developments. The pursuit of the American dream or economic success can cause deviance because it reflects a strong self-interest with little or no social interest. Self-interests focus on personal success or dominance, over others, while social interests emphasize concern for the welfare of others. Research has suggested that people tend to engage in deviance if they have a strong self-interest while lacking social interests. There are two kinds of strain that cause deviance. One, removal of positively valued stimuli. For example, the loss of a boyfriend or girlfriend, or the death or serious illness of a friend. Second, presentation of negative stimuli. For example, physical punishment or experiences as a child abuse and neglect. These strains are said to cause frustration, fear, and anger, which in turn lead to deviant actions such as theft, aggression, and drug abuse. Robert Merton evaluating enemy strain theory. The valid premise of the enemy strain theory suggests that anybody, regardless of their social class backgrounds, tends to engage in deviance if they experience a significant gap between aspiration and opportunity. Whenever the aspiration-opportunity gap strikes, it tends to generate deviation. Merton's enemy theory can be described as normlessness that may arise when there is inconsistency between the cultural goals and the means of achieving them. For example, U.S. culture places too much emphasis on success as valued goal. This inconsistency produces strain, pressure people, causing deviance.
Hello, my name is Thomas, and now we're going to be discussing social learning theory. Social learning theory essentially states that deviant behavior is learned through one's interactions with others. There's three versions: the Sutherland, where he states differential association; Glaser, where he states differential identification; and finally, Burgess and Akers, who state differential reinforcement. In 1939, Sutherland introduced differential association. Essentially, if you associate with people who hold deviant or criminal ideas, the individual is likely to become deviant himself or herself. People who hold deviant ideas do not have to be deviants. They can be anybody, even those who have not committed deviance. The theory does not suggest that if individuals have a lot of contact with deviant ideas, they will become deviant. Instead, refers to excess of deviant over conventional contacts. For example, lawyers who associate with criminals daily are not necessarily going to be criminals themselves. Glaser differential identification. In 1956, Daniel Glaser built on Sutherland's theory by suggesting that the association is meaningless unless they begin to identify with deviance. Deviance is likely to occur if differential identification intervenes between differential association and deviant behavior. Essentially, differential association will lead to differential identity, which will in turn lead to deviant behavior.
Hello, my name is Elsa Ayala, and I will be discussing Burgess and Akers' differential reinforcement. People are driven to behave a certain way if they've been rewarded for their actions, or cease their behavior if they have been punished for it. For example, robbers will continue their deviant actions if they accumulate wealth and riches and if they haven't been caught. So according to the law of differential reinforcement, a person will choose deviance over conformity if they find deviance more satisfying than conformity. This is likely to happen if the person has been exposed to deviant ideas more frequently than conventional ideas. So Burgess and Akers' theory can be expressed as differential association leading to differential reinforcement, which then leads to deviant behavior. Moving on to evaluating social learning theory, which includes Sutherland, Glaser's, and Burgess and Akers' take on social learning theory. First, Sutherland's differential association. Many sociologists have only focused on the second word of that phrase, association, so this theory has been perceived as friends, deviant behaviors and attitudes alone, and not the excess of deviant over conventional behaviors. Second, Glaser's differential identification. There's been no conclusive evidence pointing to identification with delinquents that it's the actual cause of delinquency, or that identification happens before a person becomes a delinquent, because a person may identify with a delinquent only after they've become a delinquent themselves. And lastly, Burgess and Acker's differential reinforcement. It doesn't explain why a person originally commits a deviant act, but the theory is useful for explaining ongoing acts of deviance, because individuals continue to carry out deviant acts when they've been rewarded more than punished for their deviance.
Control theory. Social learning and anomaly strain try to explain deviant behavior by determining what causes deviance. Control theory attempts to figure out what causes conformity. It assumes people are naturally inclined to commit deviant acts and will. Control theorists believe that the absence of social control causes deviance. Hirosaki, Gottfredson, and Tittle, Social Bond, Self-Control, and Control Balance. Travis Hirosaki in 1969 believed we all have the ability to be deviant, but majority don't take advantage of this because of our strong bond to society. Deviant acts occur when the bond is weak. There are 4 ways in which he believes you bond to society. First, through attachment to conventional people and the institution. Second, a commitment to conformity. Third, an involvement in conventional activities. And finally, a belief in the moral validity of social rules. If you have a strong bond, then the individual will conform, but if weak, is likely to commit deviant acts. Hirosaki and Gottfredson believe weak self-control is more useful for explaining deviance. Weak self-control can be examples of impulsiveness, recklessness, and insensitivity. Charles Tittle argues that the lack of self-control balance is what causes deviance, likely to engage in any kind of deviance if not balanced. If it is not balanced, it is either in a surplus or a deficit. A surplus meaning that you have more control over others than they have over you. A deficit meaning that others have more control over us than we do over them. Now Joshua's going to discuss Brainwright.
John Braithwaite looks at how society controls us through shaming, which is an expression of social disapproval. He focused on reintegrative shaming, which involves making wrongdoers feel guilty about what they have done while showing them understanding, forgiveness, or even respect. Reintegrative shaming is often used by affectionate parents because it welcomes back the wrongdoer, rather than just shunning them out. An example of reintegrative shaming is to make people who litter clean up city streets as a form of punishment. Reintegrative shaming is common in communist countries such as Japan, while disintegrative shaming is common in the United States. It is argued that disintegrative shaming encourages deviant behavior, which can explain the higher crime rates in the U.S. Braithwaite also argues that the U.S. can lower its crime rates if it practices reintegrative shaming rather than stigmatization. The deterrence doctrine focuses on formal social control through things such as judges and law enforcement agencies. The doctrine assumes that humans are all rational in a sense that they calculate the cost and the benefit of a crime. It also focuses on 3 ways a punishment can be carried out. Number 1, severe. The more severe the punishment, the less likely the crime will be committed. For example, if the death penalty was a standard punishment for robbery, a lot less robberies would occur. The second form of punishment is certain. The more certain the commission of a crime will result in punishment, the less likely a crime will occur. For example, if the conviction rate for murder was 99.9%, then certainly almost all murderers would be convicted, thus lowering the rate of this crime. And the third form of punishment is swift. The more swiftly the punishment is carried out, the less likely the crime is to occur. For example, if it only takes an average of 24 hours to arrest a robber in Los Angeles, then Los Angeles will have a lower robbery rate than a city where it takes longer to arrest a robber.
Hello, my name is Sarah Bao, and I'll be discussing the evaluation of the control theory. Many studies have supported Hershey's social bond and self-control theory, but most of them could not have controlled for the reciprocal effect of deviance on social bond or self-control. It seems to be the deviant experience that causes people to have a weaker social bond and self-control rather than the other way around. Also, many of the studies that support the theory turn out to be tautological. They use deviant acts such as smoking and using drugs as empirical indicators of weak self-control. These studies effectively suggest that deviance causes deviance. Braithwaite is only partially convincing in his argument that the U.S. can reduce crime with reintegrative shaming. This type of shaming may work with first-time offenders, but it won't have the same positive impact on more hardened criminals. It seems to be the pervasiveness of a communitarian society's strong social relationships that keeps the crime rate low instead of reintegrative shaming. The deterrence doctrine has received support from some studies but refuted by others. For example, various studies show that arresting wife beaters deters further violence more than less severe forms of punishment, such as ordering the offender to leave the victim for 8 hours. However, studies on released prisoners suggest just the opposite. The more severe their punishment, the more likely former inmates will commit crimes again. Finally, various control theorists regard social control only as a preventer of deviance. They fail to see it as a possible cause of deviance. For example, unlike the deterrence doctrine, the process of law enforcement to deter crime may trigger law-breaking acts. This often occurs when a police officer takes action against a suspect, which may cause the suspect to commit criminal acts such as resisting arrest or assaulting an officer. Thank you.